Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Muskogee Creek National Council emergency session. Today is April 5th, 2022. The time is 5:01 p.m. My name is Speaker William Lowe, and I call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to ask our invocation from Representative Anna Marshall.
Let us pray. Creator God, we just come to you at this time, and we just ask that you continue to lead and guide us and grant us wisdom so that we can make the decisions that will be the right ones for our citizens, and that we always work for the betterment and for the good of our nation and for our people. And we just continue to ask that you just be the light unto our path, and that you just continue to bless this nation and to bless us and to bless all of our relationships with all those that we have been in relationship with, and that we just continue those good relationships, and that we may not see the payoff today, we may not even see it in our lifetime, but we hope that one day in the future that our grandchildren, children, grandchildren will be able to reap the benefits of all the work that's being done here today. And we just ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. But Representative Marshall. Roll call. National Council Secretary Alicia Strobel.
Speaker William Lowe.
Here.
Galen Cloud.
Here.
Mary Crawford.
Present.
Joyce Steer.
Present.
Patrick Freeman.
Here.
Sandra Golden. Leonard Gouge.
Here.
Nelson Harjo.
Here.
Joseph Hicks.
Here.
Randall Hicks. Robert Huft.
Present.
Anna Marshall.
Present.
Charles McHenry. Thomasine Yahola Osborne.
Present.
Darrell Proctor.
Here.
Mark Randolph.
Present.
Speaker, you have 16 present, 0 absent.
16 present, 0 absent. That constitutes a quorum. Any business conducted today will be valid. On to order of business. NCR 22-007, a resolution of the Muskogee Creek National Council selecting Holly Dunn to the Board of Directors for Muskogee Creek Nation DME LLC, sponsor Representative Randall Hicks. Representative Randall Hicks makes a motion to adopt.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Mark Randolph. Discussion. Bring her up. Ms. Holly Dunn, could you please come up to the podium, please? If you would ensure that microphone is on. And tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Holly Dunn. A lot of you I know just by working with you within the communities. I've served with the Morse Indian community since about 2014. Currently, I'm the chair for Morse community. I've always been there for our community centers, and actually I've worked in different capacities with the nation, one being with the Children and Family Services with foster care and adoption, and I still really help as much as I can when it comes to fundraising opportunities and anything else that our children may need. Right now, I am running a detox unit with Hillcrest Hospital in Henrietta.
Outstanding. Yeah. Council representatives, do we have any questions for Ms. Holly Dunn? Comments, questions? Any council representatives? Council representatives online? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Randall Hicks. Robert Huft.
Yes.
Anna Marshall.
Yes.
Charles McHenry. Thomasine Yahola Osborne.
Yes.
Darrell Proctor.
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Galen Cloud.
Yes. Yes.
Mary Crawford.
Yes.
Joyce Steer.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Sandra Golden. Leonard Gouge.
Yes.
Nelson Harjo.
Yes.
Joseph Hicks.
Yes.
Speaker, you have 15 in favor, 0 against.
15 in favor, 0 against. NCR 22-007 is adopted. Holly, please stand up again and be recognized as our DME board member. Congratulations. We know you'll do a great job for us. Next item on the agenda, TR 22-067, a tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing the principal chief to execute a tribal participation form in order to participate in the tribal distributors tribal settlement. Sponsor, Representative Mark Randolph.
Motion to adopt.
Representative Mark Randolph makes a motion to adopt.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Joseph Hicks. Discussion.
Have to give Mr. Dillinger some time, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir.
Council members, thank you for the opportunity to present to you on this legislation. As you're aware, the nation has filed a opioid lawsuit back in 2017, I believe is when we filed it. And so we've been working on this for quite some time. And just recently, the tribes have been negotiating with the distributors of opioids, and the three major distributors in this case are McKesson, Amerisource, Bergen, and Cardinal Health. And they have agreed to pay the tribes, and all tribes are eligible for this, a sum of $515 million, based upon a formula that has been developed on how tribes will receive that $515 million. It's estimated the nation will receive $12,205,345 to go towards the abatement of opioids and to address the opioid problem within the Muskogee Creek Nation. So in order to participate in this settlement, we have to, or the chief will have to submit what's called a participation form. And the reason this is before you is that participation form has some, not only one is it a settlement, so we need your input on that and approval, but also there's some issues, some language in the participation form that we have concerns, but we want to bring to your attention. And I think probably the biggest one is that this is going through court in the state of Ohio. So we're subjected, the nation's being subjected to the jurisdiction of the Northern District of Ohio with respect to issues that fall under the settlement agreement. So so basically, you know, that's a waiver.
Okay.
And so we're wanting to just let you all know about that. That's just something, we don't anticipate any issues with that since this is a settlement. But one other thing I'd just like to let you know with respect to the $515 million that's going to Indian country, that's about 3.5% of the total settlement that's going on with the distributors. The Native American population itself makes up about 1% of the population in the United States, so we're getting 3 times what our population is with respect to the settlement in this case, which I think that's a multiplier of 3 basically. So our legal counsel has recommended that we agree to the settlement and participate in this settlement. If we don't, the odds are that we could potentially not receive anything because there's only a limited amount of money to go around. So our recommendation is for the nation to pursue and participate in this settlement.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Do we have any comments, questions from the council representatives? Comments, questions, representatives online? Hearing none, voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none opposed, TR 22-067 is adopted. TR 22-068, a tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing the principal chief to execute a tribal participation form in order to participate in the Johnson & Johnson settlement. Sponsor, Representative Mark Randolph.
Motion to adopt.
Representative Mark Randolph makes a motion to adopt.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Charles McHenry. Discussion. Mr. Dillinger, is this pretty much the same as the previous legislation? Okay. Outstanding. Okay, all right, sir. By all means, yes, sir.
Just wanted to give some credit where credit is due. Our office has worked on this, but also your legal counsel now, Mr. Haskins, has been working on this as well. So, I think if anything, we spent a lot of hours on this, probably hundreds and hundreds of hours on this case, working on getting us to a settlement. So I just wanted to give Kyle some credit because he's been a big part of this as well.
Super. All right. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you all and your efforts. I know it's lots of hours. Any comments or questions, council representatives, representatives online? Hearing none, voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none opposed, TR 22-068 is adopted. TR 22-069, a tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing the extension of the Secretary of the Nation and Commerce to continue operations of the One Fire Holding Company, LLC. Sponsor, Representative Patrick Freeman, Jr.
Motion to adopt.
Representative Patrick Freeman, Jr. makes a motion to adopt.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Joseph Hicks. Discussion. Representative Freeman.
Representative
Yes.
Freeman. Yes, Speaker. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we're just kind of continue on the way we are set up for One Fire right now in lieu of a board. So this is just another measure to make sure that Secretary of Nation is still participating in our operations at One Fire.
Yes, sir. Outstanding. Any discussion from the council representatives in attendance or online? Comments?
Speaker, I have a question.
Yes, Representative Yehola Osborne.
Since Tara is no longer with us, who is going to be filling that role?
I think Chief is looking for some person for the Secretary of Commerce, and I think right now Secretary of the Nation. I think Jeff Fife is kind of filling in right now.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none opposed, TR 22-069 is adopted. NCA 22-039, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation amending Title 22, subsection 2-102, entitled Property Subject to Forfeiture, requiring owner custodian reimbursement of cost to the Muskogee Creek Nation related to the care of animals seized due to allegations of animal cruelty. Requirement of a bond and or civil forfeiture. Sponsor, Representative William Lowe.
Chair, make a motion to adopt.
Representative Joseph Hicks makes a motion to adopt. Seconded by Representative Nelson Harjo Sr. Discussion. I'd like to defer to our legal counsel, General Counsel Kyle Haskins.
Good evening, everyone. So much of our laws are created to trying to fix gaps, issues that we have ongoing at this time. After McGirt, we started having a number of animal cruelty cases coming up. And unfortunately, on these animal cruelty cases, it wasn't a single dog. It would be 80 dogs. It would be a number of cattle, a number of horses. I think we even have a llama or two that we're responsible for. And then when we've had to pick these up, these animals are in incredible distress. They need veterinary services, they need care, they're removed from the owners that have been charged with multiple felonies. One of the cases that I know, the individual that I recall is facing 48 felony counts with regard to the animals that were in their possession. A number of these animals are so sick they've had to be put down. There's been blind ponies, a variety of horses, a couple of bulls. But what has happened to us is when we take control of these animals and we're having to provide medical care and food and shelter for these animals, the bills are horrendous. there are many, many, many thousands of dollars that Light Horse is having to take care of and pay for the care of these animals. And in the meantime, the owners of these animals are in no hurry to ever have their case come forward. And because of the deficits that we've been having in getting our courts caught up, these cases have languished. Obviously the owners don't want these cases to come up because they're facing multiple felony charges and are looking at up to 9 years in jail. So what this does is it shifts the burden to those owners to pay for those monthly expenses, just as they would if those animals were in their own homes and they were taking care of these animals as they should have, taking care of the veterinary expenses and the food, et cetera. So the obligation is shifted to the owners. They have to post a bond or pay for these costs when they come due every month. And then the court, in imposing these obligations on these persons, should they fail to be able to meet these obligations, it allows us, the word I can think of is dispose, but whether it's to give away. One of the individuals involved in these cases finally acquiesced to, I think, allowing 80 dogs to be adopted out by Oklahoma Animal Alliance. So it kind of stopped the care that we were having to provide and those costs for those animals. But there's many, many more, and a lot of these are puppy mills. So sometimes when these dogs come into our custody, one dog turns into 6 dogs, which turns into more and more. So this is an effort to try to alleviate those costs. This is something that's being borne out of the McGirt issues that we're facing. Make no mistake about it. Anybody who owns these animals will probably demand a jury trial and say, you can't take my pets from me or my livelihood absent a court order. I anticipate this is going to be challenged, but I also believe that based on the way that I've structured this law, it's defensible. I can't speak for what another judge will do, but I do believe that this is something that should withstand judicial scrutiny and appellate scrutiny. Are there any questions?
Thank you, sir. Do you have any questions for our legal counsel? Council representatives in attendance or online? Yes, Representative Deere.
Mr. Haskins, did you say that the court will determine the costs? Okay, thank you.
It actually would be the reasonable and necessary costs of caring for those animals. So it would actually be the actual costs. Some of the horses we've managed to find places where they would allow the horses to stay for free as long as we pay for the hay and the veterinary bills. So Light Horse has been very good about trying to minimize the costs that we have with regard to all these animals. So it'd be up to the court to determine what's reasonable and necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for our legal counsel? Attorney General's office, would you all like to comment, make any comments? Hearing none? None? Okay. Any more questions, comments for our legal counsel? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Joseph Hicks,
Yes.
Randall Hicks, Robert Huft,
Yes.
Anna Marshall,
Yes.
Charles McHenry,
Yes.
Thomasine Yohola Osborne,
Yes.
Darrell Proctor,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Galen Cloud,
Yes.
Mary Crawford,
Yes.
Joyce Steer,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden, Leonard Gouge,
Yes.
Nelson Harjo.
Yes.
Speaker, you have 15 in favor, 0 against.
15 in favor, 0 against. NCA 22-039 is adopted. Next item on the agenda, NCA 22-040, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation amending MCNCA Title 14, Chapter 2, Subchapter 2 of the Criminal Offenses Code of the Muskogee Creek Nation, authorizing creation of Section 2-206 entitled an Assimilative Crimes Act, incorporating Oklahoma's criminal code and the criminal codes of those municipalities existing within the reservation boundaries of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Sponsor, Representative William Lowe.
Speaker, make a motion to adopt.
Representative Joseph Hicks makes a motion to adopt. Seconded by Representative Anna Marshall. Discussion. I defer to our General Counsel, Kyle Haskins.
It's an odd name for a piece of legislation that's designed to fill gaps. Our laws prior to McGirt, we never had to deal with a lot of the issues that are coming up now. Since McGirt, we've had a number of cases that have been referred to us from state agencies to our AG's office, and we simply could not prosecute those crimes. We did not have a law on our books that covers that particular offense, so we had to decline those charges. This does not take anything away. It does give us another body of laws by which to assimilate or basically replicate, so it expands law enforcement's ability to enforce the law and our ability to prosecute those laws. It was done, and there's a, certainly Ms. Wisner is wonderful. She'll do a great job as Attorney General, but previously, this was done at the request of the Attorney General's office in the context of all of our prosecutors. Our prosecutors had expressed to Kevin and I a number of times their frustration with the fact that they could not charge a number of these offenses. A lot of these offenses include that we do not have in our books statutory rape, assault and battery upon a jailer. Oklahoma's law enforcement officers have been particularly incensed at the nation because we do not have anything in our books for somebody who's incarcerated harming a jailer. And unfortunately, those kinds of things get around through inmates, and it has been open season on our jails that we have contracted with for those persons that are designed or they're there to provide for the safety and security of everyone involved. And they've been very upset that we haven't been able to do anything about it. I have talked to, I sent out copies to our Light Horse Commission. I heard back from 2 of our commissioners, and they are support. Part of this is to keep us out of the news. One of the things that happened in the news that ran for a number of weeks were the dogs in Broken Arrow. It was a Creek Nation home. A Cherokee citizen was renting the home, and he was raising German Shepherds. Even has a website, which basically violates all of our covenants that are restrictions upon having a home. And at one time, I was told he had 38 German Shepherds inside the home, and they have destroyed this Creek home. And we're in the process. Mr. Williams is filing an eviction proceeding to get them out. But these 2 dogs that were in the backyard, large shepherds, went through this privacy fence, went through a large wooden stockade fence, chased the neighbors' 2 small pet dogs into the house. There was a dog door that these 2 German shepherds managed to crawl through, and over a period of about 40 minutes, destroyed these 2 house pets. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate that it happened, but it also was caught on security camera. So the owner came home and found his dogs torn to pieces and got to watch it on a security camera. Broken Arrow Police Department responded, and they said, it's Creek home. It is a Cherokee Nation tribal citizen. We can do nothing about it. They turned to us. We have nothing on our books by which to charge this individual. We couldn't even write him a ticket. The only thing that we can do is remove them from the home to evict them, which is Mr. Williams is in the process of doing that. This does not waive sovereignty. It does not give up the individual rights of the persons involved nor of the tribe. It just gives us a body of law. I actually thought about at one time, instead of assimilating or adopting, if you will, Oklahoma's laws, because Oklahoma law likes to legislate, they steal most of their laws from Minnesota. I actually thought about calling it an assimilation of Minnesota laws, but then state law enforcement wouldn't understand what we were doing. And to an extent that we have these agencies that have cross-stepped with us, they need to understand that those laws that they're familiar with are going to be prosecuted in our courts. It's something that's been discussed for a long time in public settings. It's something that's been hashed out, and I actually thought everybody was waiting on me to get this done because I had it suggested to me, hey, Haskins, get this completed so we can get it moving along. Again, it does not violate any sovereignty issues to the extent that any law that is borrowed or assimilated is inconsistent with our tribal law prevails. It doesn't expand anything with regard to taking anything away from us. It is a temporary gap filler. It is designed to be replaced. It would be my hope that someday we'll have the staff necessary to be able to revisit all of our laws and to integrate all of these laws that we need to cover all of these gaps, and then we can do away with any reference to ever having to have assimilated Oklahoma's laws. But including if we assimilate a law and there's a criminal act that occurs and we're going to borrow Oklahoma's criminal law on that issue, when it's charged, it's not going to say a violation of Oklahoma law. It's going to say a violation of Muskogee Creek Nation law. So Oklahoma is not ever going to be in the charging documents. It's not ever going to exist anyplace. This is just a simple borrowing. The U.S. Attorney's Office, the federal government, has done this in Oklahoma. They've assimilated Oklahoma's laws. I guess part of the questions that have come up now is, well, why can't we do something else? Why can't we rewrite our criminal code in order to adopt all these things? But honestly, we don't have anybody that's set out to do that. And in my opinion, it would take multiple people a long, long period of time to go through all of our laws and take all these other laws and assimilate them, including property crimes, white collar crimes, and write them into our laws. And then they'd be coming to you all on a piecemeal basis to pass a piece at a time. So I hope that we have that ability someday. If there's an objection to the word assimilation, because that is a legal term of art that lawyers are going to be familiar with. So if they're looking to see, if one of their clients have been charged with something, they're looking for that terminology in the digest. But I certainly have no objection if we want to change that word, if it's objectionable to someone, that's fine. I have no problem with that, and I think that's fine. But this is something that we really need to do. And if we don't pass this, then we really have got to get somebody dedicated to changing our laws to fill these holes, because we are the subject of news. Because every time something really bad happens and we don't have a law for it, we are kicked around publicly. And it's harmful, and it harms our position with regard to McGirt, and it helps sponsor or move forward those folks that want to undo McGirt, because it looks like we do not know what we are doing.
Thank you, Kyle. I would ask, can you emphasize the fact that we are not waiving our sovereignty or giving up our sovereignty to adopt this?
This does not subject a defendant to the Oklahoma courts. It does not subject us to abiding by anything. I guess one of the examples I would give you, we don't even have to enforce all of the laws that would be filled in our gaps. And the example I like to use, I probably performed or officiated 250 weddings over the years, at least, as a judge. And under Oklahoma law, if the judge doesn't ensure that the marriage license is turned in the next business day, it's a misdemeanor. It's a crime against the judge. Well, I would hope that if something like that happened, we would choose not to enforce that particular law and charge me with a misdemeanor, but you would have the availability of, simply because it's a violation of Oklahoma law that we have assimilated. So it gives up nothing. It doesn't change where people are going to be tried. It does not change how long we can incarcerate anybody. It simply gives us gap fillers.
Thank you, sir. Before you ask any questions, I'd like to give the Attorney General's office some time to speak if you have anything you'd like to say. Attorney General Wisner, welcome.
Thank you. And good evening. In looking at the proposed legislation, there are a couple of ways that I have to be honest that I feel about this. Number one, if we look at the reality of what's happening, and I say this with a couple of caveats. Did you know that statutory rape is not on the criminal code and cannot be charged currently with our current criminal codes? There are many others that would potentially shock the conscience that we are familiar with, that we recognize they protect our families, but yet they're not on our criminal code. That's our reality. However, if I look at the other side of this, it's called the Assimilative Crimes Act. If you simply take the word assimilative, I start to want to fight. Don't make me assimilate. We've been forced assimilation. It's just the word assimilate is a trigger word. So if we were to look at this, I would recommend, before even going further, that we do get a thesaurus out, find a Muskogee word. Let's rename it something that we recognize and we understand, because it's going to be our code. And our people are going to look at it and say, what? But with the Assimilative Crimes Act, there are also perspectives. There are certain things that are going to go along with that. We have Tucker Carlson talking to Governor Stitt on Fox News. And it's likely to say, and they will come back and say, I told you that the Muskogee code, the criminal code, they cannot protect their people. Their code is lacking. They can't enforce or even charge some of the most basic of criminal laws. And unfortunately, that is real. But if we turn this around, the follow-up to that is, I told you Oklahoma law is better. So they should have, you undo McGirt, because state law, which they're assimilating to, state law would carry because state law is adequate. State law is the best. Even the feds are referring to it. But the feds in 1948 recognized when they passed the Assimilative Crimes Act that passing the laws, passing the codes, took an, quote, an act of Congress. With that being said, I want to come to you with solutions, suggestions, not only laying out the problem, but how are we to fix it to make our people safe? The Assimilative Crimes Act, I inherently feel like I'm not comfortable with it. But the other part of it is, and I'm curious of how many of you knew that, again, statutory rape was not on our books as a criminal offense. Where I turn these things internally, I think for the Business, Finance, and Justice Committee, these things should have been made aware to council in the first place. It is your job to be aware of these things so you can pass laws. We talked about this prior to the meeting today, and it's been talked for several years about the status of our criminal codes. But we can't just talk about it, we have to do something. So if we pass this Assimilative Crimes Act, okay, but I want to make it my commitment by bringing to your attention the status of our state of criminal affairs. What are the crimes that need to be updated? And we've also have the committee reports that lay out what things need to be done to keep our people safe and keep our jurisdiction keep it from being a black hole of lawlessness. We have to pass these laws to be able to keep our people safe and keep it from being a lawless jurisdiction where Tucker Carlson and Governor Stitt can sit around and say, hey, look, it's dangerous going into Indian country. We have to do something about that. Either I bring to you, we work on, or somehow council appoints, how are we going to get those laws made addressed? And I also challenge you, and I'm committed on this challenge. Once we get it done, it is not a one and done and whew, we've finished that. It's an ongoing process. Technology facilitated crimes. 6 months after we would write any legislation, 6 months from now, they're probably going to be outdated because there will be some new technological advance that we need to keep an eye on to protect our children, to protect the most vulnerable. So it's an ongoing process, figuring out how do we make council aware so you can do your job, so we can keep our people safe. How is that process? How can we improve that process so you will be informed, so you can pass laws to keep our people safe? That's what I want to bring to your attention. I know I keep falling back on statutory rape just because I've been a child crimes prosecutor for many years, but there are several others. Finding out that process. If you do pass and look at the Assimilative Crimes Act, are we acquiescing to what has been alleged? That we're less than, that we can't keep up with the state of Oklahoma? Or are we going to improve our processes so we can address and make those laws to specifically protect our people within our jurisdiction? Mado.
Right. Thank you very much. Do we have any comments, questions? Representative Joseph Hicks.
Speaker, yeah, this will be for Mr. Haskins. Mr. Haskins, just to be clear for people that will be watching this recording later on, you're telling us we are not making any kind of deal with the state, right? This is just something we're kind of borrowing, but no deals with the state.
They're not involved in this process whatsoever. It doesn't require their consent. They won't receive notice that we're doing anything. This literally just allows us to adopt a law, call it our own, and enforce it.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear because I just don't want people to start making assumptions whenever they hear this, and then going out there, oh, we made a deal with the state. That's all I'm trying to keep from happening. Thank you.
And Ms. Wisner, A.G. Wisner is correct. We've got to, at some point, this Assimilated Crimes Act is supposed to be temporary. It's a bridge until such time as we get our laws brought up to speed. But at some point, we're either going to have employees, probably multiple, to work on this for a prolonged period of time, or we're going to have to outsource it and pay private lawyers to update it for us, and it will be a very expensive proposition to do.
Thank you, Mr. Haskins. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Hicks. Representative Sandy Golden, please. Can you speak into the mic, Ms. Golden? Sorry. It don't work. Okay, sorry.
We did. And it's almost.
Pardon me, Speaker.
Kyle,
I,
if I
I'm
may.
sorry. I'm sorry. I did not hear the question.
Yes, ma'am. The question to General Counsel Haskin for the recording is Representative Golden asked him, didn't we do this very same thing with the Oklahoma statute for hunting and fishing? And Kyle is answering that question now, Representative Yehola Osborne.
And that is correct.
Thank you, Speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is correct. Yes, that's exactly what we did. We, in essence, replicated Oklahoma's hunting and fishing laws, again, for consistency, and at the same time, giving us the opportunity to update those laws. We will have to avoid certain abuses, but yes. And we're also outsourcing. I think it's our child welfare folks that have hired a private attorney to update our child welfare laws, which is wonderful, but that's being outsourced, I think, to a professor in Kansas to help update some of those laws. So there's multiple ways to do this. It's just that this is something that's been long in coming. It really, something needs to be done, and it needs to be done sooner than later.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Representative Nelson Harjo Sr.
I think this is more of a statement along the lines of this. The other day I was approached by some parents, and they were trying to get a simple thing done. And the simple thing was to get a protective order against some other students who were in the school. And they were told they didn't have the ability to do so because the only protective orders that can be given is those that are maybe man and wife or lovers or related. Outside of that, there wasn't any protective orders. And I thought, that's something real. I don't know how simple it is, but it sounds real simple to me, but we don't have those things in place. And so when I look at this particular legislation and think about also the hunting and gaming thing that we did previously, sometimes I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. Now, we can take this wheel and eventually dress it up to what it is that who we are as a people, and even have our perspective interjected within it later on. And, regardless of the language that's used as far as how it's saying it's assimilated, to me, I look at this as something that would be helpful. At least we have a starting point, to begin to address a lot of issues that are in place. And without that starting point, then from what I gather from what's being said, it's going to take a long time, and it's going to be very costly for us to sit down and to just sit down and write all the laws that we absolutely need. And so at least we have something to start from to make it ours. And so that's my statement. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
What else, sir? You have any comments to that? Okay. Representative Mark Randolph, please.
Speaker, can we give some time for Mr. Joe Williams?
Yes. Is Mr. Williams online?
Yes, Speaker, I am.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you, Speaker, members of the National Council. It's an honor to be here tonight. I do agree that legislation is needed for our criminal code to strengthen it, to provide greater protections for citizens and others in the reservation. I think that's an important objective. There have been piecemeal legislation since McGirt that has been presented and passed by this council. And the objective is to continue that effort and to have some comprehensive code revisions at some point in the future. And whenever I saw this legislation, my first thought was, well, what we could do is if we were able to identify those crimes, whether they be felonies or misdemeanors that are falling through the gaps, that we work with the AG's office. Let's say we, me and the AG's office put together legislation to present to the committee through regular order, and fill in those gaps by our own methods, by our own codes. What this legislation does, it doesn't act as a gap filler. If you read it, it replaces our entire Title 14, Subchapter 2, with Oklahoma law. All the codes that we have in place are essentially replaced by Oklahoma law. And so what about, my first thought was, well, we have some specific code provisions that are critical to the nation that are beyond what Oklahoma has. For example, VAWA. The Violence Against Women Act provisions are not in Oklahoma statutes. But what happens when Oklahoma law replaces our code? Right now, the council, if you recall, about a year ago, provided for medical marijuana to be legal in the reservation as long as you had a state license to have cannabis, marijuana. But Oklahoma law doesn't have a similar provision. That medical marijuana law was made specific and tailored specific to Creek Nation because of what we had in our own law. If we go and replace all those code provisions, just whole cloth, then we do away with those things. It would, and to me, it's an infringement on sovereignty. Even though there's no waiver of sovereign immunity in the act, the whole method of replacing our code with Oklahoma law without taking into account specific provisions, and without it going into the process of gap filling, I think is an infringement on sovereignty. And what about when Oklahoma state codes, I'm sorry, what happens when an Oklahoma state court interprets an Oklahoma state law? Are we bound by that? Nothing in this legislation says that our courts are going to have to be bound by Oklahoma state courts ruling if it interprets Oklahoma law. And so I have concerns about that. I have deep concerns about that. I mean, if we didn't have a body of law in place to begin with, I could see the logic of it. But we have a body of law. This council, over many years, worked hard to create Title 14, to create these offenses. And it's true, after McGirt, we need to do some gap filling. But I believe that working together, we can do that on our own without having to borrow Oklahoma law and let it apply here, and then toss out everything that the Creek Nation has done, prior to now. Speaker, this is just my view on it. I do believe there's an urgency. I do believe there's a need to have gap filling, but I also believe that it can be done by us working together and identifying what the needs are and putting legislation together and making it as part of our own code without having to adopt another jurisdiction's provisions to do that. Thank you.
No, Mr. Williams. Representative Mark Randolph, please.
Speaker, as a sponsor, would you consider postponing for 30 days?
I think I'm pretty firm on this. Kyle?
Speaker.
If I could
To answer that question, Representative Randolph, I would be firm on this, just to answer your question, sir.
Right, thank you. I asked if he would be willing to postpone for 30 days.
Representative Randolph, my only concern is that we continually have offenses coming from law enforcement agencies to our AG's office that we cannot charge. And postponing it may just lead us back into being in the news again for something horrendous that's newsworthy that we're unable to move forward with. And that would be my only comment in that regard. Certainly if that's what the council wants to do, I support it. Second Chief even suggested having some sort of a sunset clause that requires us to go back and revisit this in 90 days or whatever. I truly believe, this is intended to be a stopgap. And to the extent that our laws are inconsistent with Oklahoma laws, our laws control. This does not supplant, does not rewrite any of our laws. It's a gap filler. And to the extent that they're inconsistent, and it's simply our laws control. So I have the highest regard for Mr. Williams, and certainly what you're suggesting, gives people a chance, an opportunity to think about it. And in fact, you'd be right in kind of thinking, well, I've kind of pushed this in. And the answer to that is, yeah, I was under the impression that I've had a lot of people waiting on me to get this researched and get it done. So I did it as quickly as I could, coming over to this office. And after doing that work, I've put this together. So, but no, do I have any objection to what you're requesting? It's only out of concern.
Thank you, Kyle. Any other comments, questions? Representative McHenry.
I have a question. Thank you. So if we already have a law in place and then we go ahead and vote this in here, and we already have a law in place, when we vote this assimilation in, does that trump what we already have in place?
Not at all. To the extent that they're inconsistent, our laws control. And we would not be enforcing another court's interpretation of Oklahoma law. It'd be our courts interpreting the law that we have assimilated that we're using for purposes of prosecution.
So basically, what we already have in place stays in place regardless of what state law says, but this is for the purpose of the laws that we do not have. So we'll have some teeth or something to stand on.
Exclusively.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, questions? Anyone? Chief, would you like to address?
Thank Light Horse Commissioner Renee Borg is on there. May I ask her?
Renee, are you the only commissioner online?
I believe I am, Speaker.
Are you able to speak on behalf of the chair of the commission? Or are you giving your opinion on just as a commissioner?
I am giving my opinion just as a commissioner because when Kyle had presented this to us the other day, it was just brief via email. We talked a little bit about it in our commission meeting. There was not a consensus as to anybody, being in favor of this or opposed of it.
Yes,
but I did have a comment regarding. I have a problem with the term assimilation, just in general, just due to what it means, and especially with our people historically. That term is just bothersome with the current temperature with the state leaders as it is right now. But I would just like to point out that the Violence Against Women Act just passed last month on, I believe, March 23rd, which, for those of you who know Oliphant, gave us some Oliphant fixes in VAWA, meaning that it gave tribal nations the authority to prosecute non-native offenders on our reservation in cases of domestic violence and sexual assault, assault on police officers. Jump in, Joe, if I'm forgetting anything, but there are several laws that are going to have to be updated due to VAWA passing. And this is going to come with funding, and it's federal legislation, and it's going to give more protection to the nation. It's going to give more authority to the nation to protect our citizens. And I think that we're going to have to update our laws to meet those needs with VAWA. So I do not see the urgency to assimilate state law when we're going to have to fill some gaps that is coming our way anyway that's beneficial to the nation. Mado, for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner Stapp. Any other comments, questions from the representatives in attendance online? Representative Randall Hicks. AG, just 1 second. Just for the recording record, Representative Hicks did ask, was this bill presented to the AG's office before today's meeting, if I'm correct, Representative Hicks? AG Wisner? Yes, ma'am.
And to answer your question, it was a little bit of everything that you just mentioned. I believe this is today Tuesday? This is my second day. I believe we saw it maybe over the weekend. It was shared, and we had talked some about it. In the AG's office, we had discussed it, and I did meet with Mr. Haskins prior to the meeting today to express my concerns with the bill and maybe how we may be able to resolve some issues, but it had been discussed. Yes. I expressed my concerns, the name of the bill, the fact that we are assimilating or using state law, as opposed to adopting our own and integrating our own as we see fit. Yes, I did express those concerns. But I also understand the immediacy of getting something done to protect our people. Thank you.
Yes, Kyle.
Prior to AG Wisner coming in, this actually went to the AG's office some weeks ago. After I got it done, it went through all the criminal department. I took all their comments and questions and made any revisions that they had. So certainly there's a change of administration, and so yes, Ms. Wisner is correct. It is something that they just had the opportunity to look at because it was something that we just added into this emergency bill, but it was previously gone through all the prosecutors, the office, and made revisions. Certainly.
Thank you, sir.
Speaker?
Yes. Mhm. Mhm. Yes, sir. For the record, Representative Hicks said 2 years ago we did hire some attorneys to handle these legal and law issues, and it didn't happen, and now we're rushing again to make this happen. So for the record, that was discussed. Representative Mark Randolph.
Speaker, is there any way, maybe you could meet with these folks and iron out all these things, and maybe within a week or something, call another session, or we don't have to wait a month,
Yeah.
but I would like to see us put something really good together where everybody's okay with it and make it as strong as we can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank
I'm
you.
willing to. I'm willing to do that. To wait a week and discuss and get everybody on the same page. And I appreciate everyone's concern as a sponsor. I can't make the motion since I'm running the meeting, but if somebody wants to make that motion.
I'll make a motion that we postpone for a week.
Representative Mark Randolph makes a motion that we postpone this legislation for a week, seconded by Representative Randall Hicks. Any discussion? Representative Golden.
But I'd like to say what I have heard is part of it is language and part of it is something that's not there anyway. And so what we're doing today, or what this is today, was to go ahead and pass this, because there are people, citizens out there that are hurting because of we haven't done this. And so even if it's a week or a month, we could still pass this, and we could still work together and in the regular session, have those things put in here in the next meeting. And we would continue to do that. That's what I heard Mr. Haskins say. So I'm not in a position to say we should postpone it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Golden. Any other discussion? Motion is postponed for 1 week. Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Galen Cloud,
Yes.
Mary Crawford,
Yes.
Joyce Steer,
No.
Patrick Freeman,
No.
Sandra Golden, Leonard Gouge,
Yes.
Nelson Harjo,
Yes.
Joseph Hicks,
No.
Randall Hicks, Robert Huft,
Yes.
Anna Marshall,
No.
Charles McHenry, Thomasine Yohola Osborne,
Yes.
Darrell Proctor.
No.
Speaker, you have 9 in favor, 6 against.
9 in favor, 6 against. NCA 22-040 has been postponed for 1 week. We'll have another emergency session on this day next week to address this issue. At this time, I would like to relinquish the chair to second speaker, Robert Huft.
Next on the agenda is NCA 22-041, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation amending NCA 21-166, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation approving the comprehensive annual budget for fiscal year 2022 and providing for appropriation. Sponsor William Lowe.
Thank you, Speaker. I make a motion to adopt a substitute.
Motion made to adopt a substitute. Here, a second.
Second.
Second's been made by Joe. The floor is open for discussion.
Thank you, Speaker. Yeah, I visited with Clay Darnell, back in, I would say, during the budget hearings, the Hugh Committee, the first discussion was there was going to be a 6% employee increase due to inflation and the price of goods going up. And I believe during the CAB discussions, that 6% was still mentioned. I got an update from Clay a couple of weeks ago to see if that increase had been implemented, and he said no, it hadn't been implemented, but we at this time can only do 4%. And you can see in the substitute that those employees that have got an increase this year would be not qualify for this, or those employees that are on probation wouldn't qualify for the 4%. So last Friday, before we did the emergency session agenda, I visited with Chief Hill, and we had some discussion on this. And for me, I introduced this legislation because I feel our employees deserve this raise, and with the inflation especially. And I feel that with the controller's guidance that he was pretty firm at 4%. So I went on ahead and introduced this legislation today. So I would like to give Chief Hill some time to discuss this issue as well.
Hey, Chief.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker did contact me Friday. And again, I do want to say that this really should be administrative side, administrative legislation coming through. I do appreciate going out and doing this legislation, which we already, we understand. We get phone calls too with the inflation, gas prices, everything. Had Whitney already prepared legislation for what we want to do as a bonus. Because if you look at the ones that's making 25,000, 30,000, that's average, you're looking at $30 something a paycheck. I think it's hurting now. The employees are hurting now. So to us, I felt that it's best to go ahead and do this and work on the raises this coming budget. There are some that still coming through the office that I have to sign off the PARs because they were entered into the flat budget. There was some that were added in the expansion budget that we had, but due to some questions that it was suggested to go ahead and just submit the flat budget, get that through, and we will do the raises. But we are seeing a lot of PARs come through, and that was one of the questions that we had. I know with Second Chief working here that he worked in the grants, worked on grants as well. We have a concern that it's going to affect a lot of the grants program. If you want to discuss that, and I can go ahead later.
Madam Chief, just some of the concerns, nobody wants to be the bad guy in this, right? I mean, whenever you see the legislation, that 4% raise for our employees, all the employees are gonna, yeah, you want 4%, right? And so nobody wants to vote no on the 4% and be the bad guy. We understand that. When we were doing the budget process, we talked about the raises. We had a conversation with Clay about the raises. We had a conversation with Clay yesterday about the raises, and it's not sustainable. And so there's a difference between being able to afford a 4% raise and be able to sustain a 4% raise. We can give one, but we can't sustain one the way we're going right now. And so some of the concerns that we had whenever we were looking at this during the budget process, hope everybody can hear me, was one, the increased cost due to McGirt, okay? As everybody knows, we had increased millions in Light Horse, in the court system, in the Attorney General's office, jail fees. All those play into the budget. And so those were costs were kind of unknown at the time because we were still finding out, oh, we got to pay this now. Oh, we got to pay for a horse that we've had, that for 6 months now. And so these are the costs that we kept on finding. And are these costs going to be reoccurring to the nation? We're not quite sure yet. We know that feds passed their 2022 spending bill. We know that they have included money to address McGirt, but we don't know how much will be actually funneled down to the tribes yet. And so we could have some relief on those costs depending on how much money we get. But we don't know if that's a one-time deal or is it going to be in the spending bill every year from here on out. We believe it should be in the spending bill from here on out because it's a trust responsibility. And we do have a few grants that have helped with McGirt, but it's not nearly enough. And so a lot of the money that we're spending to do with McGirt comes from tribal funds. And so, that's some of the issues that we had with the 4% raise 6 months into our fiscal year, because we're 6 months into our fiscal year already. Some programs were allowed to give an increase while maintaining a flat budget. And some of those raises were minimal or less than 4%. And so they would be kicked out of this 4% raise. Those employees would be ineligible. It does not create parity. And what I mean by parity is that we worked hard to look at similar jobs in similar programs, meaning you might have a bus driver over here and a bus driver over here, but there's no parity in salary. Somebody's making this over here and somebody's making this over here. And so we did a limited wage study, and we've tried to be fair on that end, is to bring this person up over here. But it's not across the board yet through the nation because we have to do it judiciously and we have to do it fiscally responsible. And so just as an example, if we have two people making one $30,000 and one $35,000 and they're doing the same job, well, you give a 4% increase. Well, at the beginning, the difference was $5,000, right? You give somebody 4% increase, the person that's making $30,000 now is making $31,200, and the person that's making $35,000 is now making $36,400. So the gap is now $5,200 instead of $5,000. So you're not solving the parity problem. You're actually widening the gap of parity. The total increase is 1.6 million, with I'm just rounding up numbers, with 1.2 million out of tribal funds and 400,000 out of federal funds. I've worked in federal grants for 15 years. And when you submit a federal budget for a federal grant, once you submit it and once they approve it and once you submit your budget, that's it. You don't increase it at all. If your budget is for $10, then it's for $10 for that year. You can move some money around with it, that $10, but you have your salaries, your deliverables, which are very important whenever you get grant money. But you can't go back to your grantor and ask for more money. It doesn't happen that way. So the law says that there's going to be roughly a $400,000 increase in federal funds. I asked Clay point blank, Clay, where's that money going to come from? We can't go back to our federal grantors, and ask for more money. It won't happen. They'll say no. He didn't have an answer. So the employees that are paid with federal grants, they have potentially not being eligible for this 4% because their grantors won't allow it. because we're already 6 months into the fiscal year. And just remember, on the travel side, for every dollar that you are increased in salary, that's actually $1.73 hit to the budget, because you got to account for fringe and you got to account for indirect cost. And so somebody might be go from $10 to $11, but it's actually going from 10 to $11.73 to the budget per hour. So it's just not a dollar for dollar; it's a dollar for $1.73. And we have been using 2018 gaming projections for the budget because that was our last normal year. 2019 we had the flood, 2020 we had COVID, 2021 we had COVID, and so we have not had a normal fiscal year since 2018. And so we've had record-breaking gaming profits the last 2 years, but that's a unicorn. It's not going to happen every single year. This will eventually come back to normal. We don't know exactly when, but eventually it will come back to 2018 gaming projections, because that's where it's historically been. And so that's how we have to forecast our budget. And so we're using those 2018 numbers because we have to be fiscally responsible. In 2020, I think in the last year of Chief Floyd's administration, there was actually a reduction in budget. And so we have been going off that budget, around that budget since then. We've asked for a flat budget since then. And so we know there haven't been an overall increase in budget since then. Some have by necessity, though. And we know that we have grown in services, right? We've increased services, but we not necessarily have increased in personnel. And so we know that with that being said, that how can we reward our employees without increasing the budget? Nobody wants to be the Grinch in this office. I understand that, and nobody wants to vote no on an increase and a pay raise to our employees. I understand that. So some of the ideas we've had to help our employees was the one that Chief Hill talked about, was the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. In December, we give a $500 bonus to our employees. This is the same thing. It's a COLA of what we have here is we have the numbers for a $1,000 COLA for all employees. That amounts to about $2.3 million. It's a lot of money, but we have to remember that $2.3 million will not be added to the to FY23, the fiscal year of 23. It's a one-time hit. Okay, and so we don't have to pay, the employees don't have to pay taxes on it. We don't have to pay indirect costs or fringe on it. It's just a straight $1,000 to every employee's that's underneath the same policy that we give our employees $500. So we already have it set up. Okay, so we already have that system set up. And some of the other things that we talked about regarding inflation, we know that gas is up. Everybody knows that. We know that bread is up, milk is up, everything's up. So moving forward, we would like to work with the council on this FY23 budget. Pretty soon we're going to have a budget call for FY23, but one of the things that we looked at is a livable wage. A minimum wage is not a livable wage. Those are not the same thing. A livable wage here in Oklahoma, depending on your family dynamics, is about $13.36 an hour, somewhere around there. If we, as a nation, decided to pass a law and increase our minimum wage to say $13.50, it'd be about a $270,000 increase to our budget. That's pretty good. That's not bad. Including fringe and IDC, it's about $400,000. Let's say we wanted to increase it to $15 though, right? That's about a little bit over $30,000 for our employees. It would increase our budget as it stands right now by $630,000, including IDC and fringe. It'd be a little bit over $1 million overall. And so, to me, those are things that are more sustainable. Those are the things that when somebody looks at the nation and says, "Hey, I'm going to work for the nation because they start me out at $15 an hour." You can make $15 an hour at Burger King, right? So why can't we compete with Burger King? That's ridiculous. And so, if as a nation as a whole, if we commit to our employees having a livable wage, I think that says volumes about what we think of our employees and how we value our employees. But all these changes have to happen in FY23. It's going to be very, very difficult to pass this 6 months into the fiscal year, and already with the federal grants coming 6 months into federal grants, there's going to be some employees that will just miss out on this raise. But we feel with the COLA, with the $1,000 COLA, if that's, we will have to get with Clay too. Clay starts sweating, whenever he hears these monies, hear these numbers. But we think that's more fair because we established it during Christmas time. All the employees like the $500, straight $500. They don't have to pay taxes or nothing. And so we feel that this $1,000 COLA will help out our employees with the increase of fuel and other things like that. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. When me and Chief initially visited, he mentioned the fact that if you all were to do evaluations, you all would do a tiering system. So with this 4%, he mentioned if you did an evaluation, you would give those that are doing well 6%, those doing okay would get 5%, and those doing the, average or marginal would get 4%. So it's pretty much kind of the same thing, in that discussion. None of all the numbers you just mentioned to us, and they're great. Appreciate you, Second Chief. That's some good studies. But that wasn't mentioned in our initial conversation. Right. So, that's why I'm pretty firm on this 4%. I think I think the council agrees to work with you all in fiscal year 23. But right now, inflation, it's not going to wait on us until then. Our people are hurting now. And I get calls since employees can't talk to me or the council, it's their spouses that's calling up here and just, really advocating for their salary. So I appreciate that, and I would ask any other
questions from Joe?
No questions, Second Speaker. I'd just like to ask Speaker if I could be a co-sponsor on this legislation, please.
Okay.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
fine. Any other questions from the council? Sandy, Representative Golden.
Thank you, Chief and Second Chief. Every year, I think there is a legislation that says that the executive office has to put something in the paper that tells everybody's salaries according to the wage and salary scale. When was the last time that was changed?
They did it last year. I think HR submitted it last year.
For all of the whole
tribe.
And it got approved by the council.
we say salary scale, what do you mean?
Salary scale, everybody that has a certain, they get a certain amount. And if they're in this dictionary of titles, they get a certain amount. And all those people that are in this dictionary of title, I'm talking about someone that's a manager versus someone that's a ground on the boots kind of person that cuts trees and so.
You're
those
talking about
kinds.
being noted in the paper?
Yeah,
Or-
well,
yeah,
So every year it says GS 11,
Yeah.
GS 2, whatever, and there's a salary range. So that comes from a salary and wage scale that has been approved by the council, that has been implemented by the executive office, and that's what I'm talking about. When is the last time that's been done?
If you're referring to that chart that we use.
The scale.
The scale has never been changed.
Okay.
Just change people within that scale.
Okay.
If they go from manager, you go to MS. If you're just, if you're tree cutter, you're still at, SG or whatever it is. Once you become a different title, then that might determine if you go to the other wage scale.
Yeah, okay, so my point is, those people who've been here for a certain period of time, they're not ever gonna make that manager status. They're just gonna work and continue to get to that glass ceiling. And they only have to depend on the Creek Nation to give them a raise every year or not. And we get calls, I'm not gonna say I get calls, and people tell me that when we got our budget approved, we didn't get a raise. We were told we couldn't get, our department could not get it. And so to me, this right here, according to our wage scale, would apply to all of the employees, not just the ones that got a raise in the last budget. And so when they reach parity, which is parity that they got the same increase that the same other person got, if we pick and choose who gets the $1,000 or the $500, they still are still in the same scale of their salary. They're not getting any better. And so this is a way for us to do that. That's what I see, because we have not changed that wage and salary scale. They're still on the bottom. If they're there, that's where they're going to stay. I don't have any more.
Thank you. Anybody? Anyone else? Counsel. Anybody else from council? Representative Hicks.
Have a raise, but a couple of concerns I have, and that I was thinking about that he brought up was like our Head Start programs. They do receive grant money, but in this legislation, it states all employees. So how will that affect, like Second Chief said, in that when they apply for the grants, they have to submit a budget as well and how it's going to be spent, and they're allocated for that amount. Then the second issue or concern I have is the new hires that were just hired 60, 120 days. So according to this, they're getting a 4% increase versus seasoned employees that's been here 10, 15, 20 years that never got anything and probably came in at $9, $10 an hour, and now probably up to 13 or 14. You got somebody that came in making 12 or 13, may surpass them with this 4% because the season didn't get raises. I don't know. That's some of the things that I'm thinking. I mean, like I said, I know and I want our employees to have raises, but how do you make it fair? That's the question.
Okay.
How do you make it fair?
Any other questions from the council? Give you 1 minute.
Chairman?
Yeah, I will. Just to answer Ms. Golan, Representative Golan's questions. During the budget call, we had 2 meetings with the controller, with all the managers and directors. And if they hadn't expanded in a flat budget, and a lot of them, I told them, give your employees a raise. I said, based on, and some of them that submitted their flat budget, they looked at their line items, some of the stuff that wasn't being used in their supplies or contractual they didn't use from a previous year, they offset that. So they were able to give their employees a raise. But I instructed all of them that please give your employees a raise. And the majority of them was in their expanded budget, which during that time, there was a lot of questions on the expanded budget. So submitted a flat budget, and you said, we'll work on them as they coming through. Most of them are coming through now. I showed the Second Chief today, I signed 2 of them, 2 PARs coming through. So they were instructed. And if you remember, I had a meeting with each committee in the office with Clay. And that was one of my statements, that you're going to see some budgets coming through with raises. So we did.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Chief. Anyone else? Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Sure.
Representative Uhola, Osborne.
Yeah, just a couple things. I'm going to go back to what Representative Hicks said, because prior to that, I was thinking about those that have seniority and those that come in and they're making, if we were to increase the minimum wage, those guys are going to make more coming in than a lot of our people who've been here for years. But Chief, you just said something that I want to ask the question regarding. You said you had instructed, your secretaries, managers, or whomever to give raises. Everybody is supposed to get a raise. Is that correct? And if so, how can you ensure that everyone received their raise? Thank you, Chairman.
Chief.
sorry, I was talking to Second Chief. I may have missed it, but she's wanting to assure how and make sure they did receive the raises.
Yes, that's correct.
All the ones what we can do is get with HR. They'll see the parts that I approve come through, and come to budget. If let's just say if you want to go with the 1,000 bonus, we'll see the ones that did not get a raise. It'll come through because I get a list of all the names, the job descriptions, and everything from each department. So I have a head count on who's all in what department, who received a raise, who didn't, how much, the percentage wise. So I'll be able to see that.
Okay, thank you. Representative Osborne, is that good enough?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chief.
Okay,
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
William Lowe,
Yes.
Galen Cloud,
Yes.
Mary Crawford,
Yes.
Joyce Steer,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden, Leonard Gouge,
Yes.
Nelson Harjo,
Yes.
Joseph Hicks,
Yes.
Randall Hicks, Robert Huft. Oh, sorry. Anna Marshall,
Yes.
Charles McHenry,
Yes.
Thomasine Yohola Osborne,
Yes.
Darrell Proctor,
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Abstain.
Speaker, you have 14 in favor, 0 against, and 1 to abstain.
Excuse me, we have 14 in favor, none against, 1 abstention. That NCA 22-041 has passed. At this time, I'll relinquish the chair back to the speaker.
Mado, second speaker. Announcements. Council, do we have any announcements? Council representatives. Yes, second speaker.
Internal Affairs will meet right after this.
Yes, sir. Internal Affairs meeting right after this. Yes, ma'am. Also, last session, we did pass a Ukraine support letter, so council representatives, please sign 2 other copies for us. We need your signature on those. Any other announcements? On to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Representative Joseph Hicks makes a motion to adjourn, seconded by Representative Nelson Harjo Sr. Voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Hearing no opposition, we are adjourned. Benediction, I would like to ask Representative Charles McHenry for a benediction, please.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we praise your holy name. Give thanks, Father, for this day that you've blessed us with, the life that you've given us, Father. Father, we just thank you for this time that we're able to assemble ourselves, Father, and conduct the business of the nation, of our citizens, Father. We pray that the decisions that were made, Father, will be blessed by you, Father. That, Father, as we continue to move forward, Father, that you continue to lead us and guide us. Keep your arms wrapped around us. We ask all these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. Mado, Representative McHenry, we are adjourned at 6:23 p.m. Everyone, please get home safely.